Simon Cowell turned away. Just like that. No applause. No critique. Nothing. The cameras kept rolling. The lights burned bright. But he refused to even glance at her. For a moment, the room froze. Contestants gasped. The audience leaned forward, confused. How could the man who had built a career on judging talent, ruthless, unflinching, fearless, simply ignore someone standing right in front of him? And yet, that single refusal would ignite a storm that neither Simon nor the world could have predicted. She stood there, trembling, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. Her hands were sweaty, her palms pressed to the microphone, but her eyes stayed fixed on the judges' panel. She had dreamed of this moment her entire life. Every rehearsal, every late-night practice, every whispered encouragement from friends and family had led her here. And yet, nothing. No recognition. Only the cold, sharp dismissal that cut deeper than any word could. It wasn't that Simon hated her, or that she lacked talent. It was something different, something invisible, something that only a few ever sense in that room filled with ambition and hope. Some called it timing, some called it intuition. But for her, it felt like the world had suddenly gone silent, leaving her alone in the harsh spotlight of judgment. The story of this moment doesn't start with a stage or a camera. It starts years earlier, in a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and a tiny piano that barely stayed in tune. It starts with her mother's voice, telling her, "You have a gift, but the world isn't ready for it yet." It starts with endless hours of practice in the dark, when no one was watching, when failure was a friend she couldn't shake. And yet, despite all that preparation, Simon's refusal felt like the ultimate test. The myth of him, invincible, unbreakable, untouchable, loomed over her like a shadow. People would later tell stories about that moment as if it were a legend. They'd ask, why did he turn away? Some would claim it was arrogance, others pure genius. But the truth was far more human, far more fragile, and far more revealing than anyone could imagine. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in life aren't about approval or applause. They're about what you do when the world looks the other way. They're about standing tall, trembling hands and all, and believing in yourself even when someone like Simon Cowell refuses to. And in that refusal, in that moment of silence and shock, a story began. One that would test her spirit, push her to the edge, and ultimately change the way millions would see not just her talent, but her courage. Before the bright lights, before the stage, before Simon Cowell ever looked away, there was a small, broken home on the edge of town. She grew up where dreams felt too expensive. The roof leaked when it rained. The heater barely worked in winter. Some nights, dinner was just toast and tea. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Her father had left when she was young, chasing promises that never came true. Music was the only thing that stayed. There was an old keyboard someone had thrown away. A few keys didn't work. The sound was thin and shaky, but to her it was magic. She would press the same notes again and again, trying to copy songs she heard on the radio. She didn't know about vocal coaches. She didn't know about stage training. She only knew how it felt when she sang. Felt like escape. The school kids laughed at her clothes. They whispered about the way she talked. She was quiet, shy. The girl in the back of the class who carried big dreams in a small backpack. When teachers asked what she wanted to be, other kids said doctor, lawyer, athlete. She said singer. They smiled politely, but behind that smile was doubt. There were nights she cried into her pillow, wondering if they were right. Maybe people like her didn't belong on big stages. Maybe talent wasn't enough. Maybe money and connections mattered more. Still, she practiced. She sang while washing dishes. She sang while walking to school. She sang in empty hallways just to hear her voice echo back at her. Her mother would sit at the kitchen table, exhausted, and listen with tears in her eyes. "You're meant for more," her mother would say, but more felt far away. Auditions cost money. Travel cost money. Even printing forms felt like a burden. They saved coins in a jar labeled dream. Some weeks they had to open it just to buy groceries. That hurt the most, watching the dream shrink just to survive another day. Still, she refused to quit. Because deep down, beneath the fear and the hunger and the shame, there was a quiet belief. A whisper that said, one day. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she believed the world would hear her. And when the chance to audition for a major talent show finally came, it felt impossible. The bus ride alone took hours. Her hands shook the whole way. She carried one small bag and a heart full of hope. She wasn't just walking into an audition. She was carrying years of struggle with her. Every cold night, every empty plate, every laugh from classmates who didn't believe. That stage wasn't just a platform. It was her way out. If this part of her journey moves you, leave a comment below. Because the hardest battles are often fought long before anyone sees the spotlight. She did not want fame. She wanted to be heard. That was the difference. As the bus rolled closer to the city, she pressed her forehead against the window and watched the buildings grow taller. Each mile felt like a step toward something bigger than herself. She wasn't chasing applause. She wasn't chasing headlines. She was chasing a feeling she had carried since childhood. The moment when a room goes quiet and a voice fills the space with truth. She had imagined this day 1,000 times. In her mind, the judges would lean forward. The crowd would hold their breath. Her first note would rise steady and strong, and something inside the room would shift. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real. The dream was simple. Stand on a stage. Sing from the heart. Change her life. But simple dreams are often the hardest to reach. When she arrived at the audition hall, the lines stretched around the building. Hundreds of faces, some confident, some terrified, some warming up their voices loudly to prove they belonged. She felt small again, invisible, like the little girl in the back of the classroom. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if she wasn't ready? What if Simon was right to turn away from people like her? What if this was just another door waiting to close? She almost stepped out of line. Almost. But then she remembered the jar labeled Dream, the coins, the sacrifice, her mother's tired smile, and she stayed. Inside the waiting room, everything moved fast. Numbers were called. Names were mispronounced. People walked in hopeful and walked out silent. Some cried. Some laughed too loudly. The air felt heavy with expectation. When her number was finally called, her legs felt weak. This was it. The door opened. The lights were brighter than she imagined. The stage felt larger. And there they were, the judges, including Simon Cowell. Calm. Still. Watching. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the microphone might pick it up. But then something strange happened. The fear didn't disappear. It softened. Turned into focus. She wasn't thinking about winning anymore. She wasn't thinking about proving anyone wrong. She was thinking about the little girl singing in the dark with a broken keyboard. She took a breath. And she began. The first note wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was honest. And in that single note lived every cold night, every doubt, every whispered one day. The big dream wasn't about becoming a star. It was about refusing to stay small. The song ended. For a split second, there was silence. The kind that feels heavy. The kind that stretches too long. She searched their faces. One judge smiled softly. Another looked unsure. And then her eyes moved to Simon Cowell. He didn't clap. He didn't lean forward. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he turned his head slightly, almost as if he was listening to something else. Her stomach dropped. The other judges began to speak. They talked about potential, about nerves, about needing more control. Their words were polite, careful, but none of it mattered, because the only reaction she wanted, the only one that could change everything, never came. Finally, Simon spoke. His voice was calm, not cruel, not loud, just firm. I'm not sure you're ready for this. That was it. Not ready. Two simple words. To the world, it sounded like feedback. To her, it sounded like a door slamming shut. She nodded, tried to smile, thanked them, walked off stage with steady steps. But the moment she reached the hallway, her legs gave out. She sat against the wall, staring at the floor. Not ready. Hadn't she been preparing her whole life? Hadn't she practiced in the dark while others slept? Hadn't she carried this dream through hunger and shame and doubt? What more did the world want from her? Other contestants walked past, some celebrating, some crying. The cameras didn't follow her. There was no dramatic music, no comforting speech, just the quiet echo of those two words repeating in her mind. Not ready. When she called her mother, she tried to sound strong. "It's okay," she said. "Maybe next time." But her voice cracked. And on the other end of the phone, her mother stayed silent for a long second before whispering, "I'm still proud of you." That made it worse. On the bus ride home, she didn't look out the window. She didn't imagine the future. She just replayed the audition over and over. What if she chose a different song? What if she sang louder? What if she had been braver? Failure has a way of making you question everything. Back home, the keyboard sat in the corner, dust already settling on the keys. For the first time in years, she didn't want to touch it. Maybe Simon was right. Maybe talent wasn't enough. Maybe she had mistaken hope for destiny. Days turned into weeks. The dream that once burned bright now flickered. Friends stopped asking about the audition. Life returned to normal. Small, quiet, safe. But inside her, something refused to die completely. Because even in failure, there was a strange truth. Simon hadn't said she was bad. He hadn't said she should quit. He said she wasn't ready. And maybe, just maybe, that meant the story wasn't over. If you've ever been told you weren't ready, leave a comment below. Because sometimes rejection isn't the end. It's the beginning of a harder path. For a while, she stayed quiet. No big announcements. No brave speeches online. Just silence. But silence can be powerful. It gives you space to think, to feel, to decide. One night, weeks after the audition, she sat alone in her room. The house was dark. The world felt asleep. She stared at the old keyboard in the corner. Dust covered the broken keys. It looked smaller than she remembered. Not ready. The words still hurt. But this time they felt different. Less like a wall. More like a challenge. What if Simon wasn't rejecting her? What if he was warning her? The truth was hard to admit. She had been nervous. Her voice had shaken. She had played it safe. She sang beautifully, yes, but she hadn't shown fire. She hadn't shown the storm inside her. And that night, she made a decision. If she wasn't ready, she would become ready. She started over. She found free vocal lessons online. She practiced breathing until her chest hurt. She recorded herself singing and forced herself to listen back, even when it made her cringe. She worked on stage presence in front of a cracked mirror, learning how to stand, how to own space, how to look fearless even when she wasn't. Months passed. Then something unexpected happened. A local music teacher saw one of her practice videos online. It wasn't perfect, but it was raw, honest, different. He sent her a message. "I see something special in you," he wrote, "but you're holding back." They began working together. He didn't treat her like a star. He treated her like a fighter. He pushed her harder than she had ever pushed herself. If she hit a wrong note, they repeated the song. If her confidence dropped, they stopped and talked about why. For the first time, someone wasn't just praising her. They were shaping her. Then came the call. The talent show was holding special comeback auditions. A second chance for a small group of contestants who had potential but weren't quite there yet. Her name was on the list. Her heart raced when she read the email. This was it. But this time it felt different. She wasn't desperate anymore. She wasn't hoping to be saved. She was prepared to fight. When she walked back into that audition room, she stood taller. The lights didn't scare her. The silence didn't shake her. And when her eyes met Simon Cowell's, she didn't look away. Because this time, she wasn't asking for approval. She was ready to prove something. This time, she didn't tremble. The music started, and she didn't hold back. Her voice was stronger, deeper. There was pain in it, fire in it. Every note carried something real. Not just skill, not just practice, but hunger. When she finished, the silence felt different. Simon looked at her, really looked at her, and then he nodded. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't loud praise, but it was enough. "You're ready now," he said. 3 words. The opposite of before. And just like that, everything changed. She moved forward in the competition. Week after week, she survived eliminations. The audience began to notice her story. The girl who was once told she wasn't ready was now one of the strongest voices on stage. Social media clips of her performances spread fast. Strangers wrote messages saying she inspired them. Felt unreal. But success has a price. Rehearsals became longer. Sleep became shorter. Interviews filled her schedule. She barely had time to call home. The small apartment that once felt like her whole world now felt far away. Her mother tried to sound cheerful on the phone. "We're so proud," she would say. But sometimes her voice carried loneliness. Fame moves fast. Faster than the heart can adjust. People who once ignored her now wanted photos. Old classmates sent messages. Some congratulated her. Others hinted that they always believed in her. She smiled politely, but deep down she remembered who stayed when it was hard. Pressure grew heavier each week. Every performance had to be better than the last. Judges praised her growth. Fans expected perfection. She started waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing. What if she slipped? What if she proved Simon wrong after all? Success can be scarier than failure. Because when you fail, you expect it. When you rise, you fear the fall. There were moments backstage when she felt alone. Surrounded by people, yet isolated. Makeup artists, producers, cameras, noise everywhere. But inside, silence. Was she becoming someone else? Was she losing the girl who sang in the dark? One evening, after a powerful performance that brought the crowd to its feet, she walked off stage and felt nothing. No joy, no relief, just exhaustion. That scared her, because the dream had never been about applause. It had been about meaning. And now she had both opportunity and pressure pulling at her from every side. If this part of her journey touches you, leave a comment below. Because rising is beautiful, but staying true while you rise, that is the real battle. The night everything almost ended didn't come with warning. No flashing red lights, no dramatic music, just exhaustion. Weeks of pressure had built quietly inside her. Interviews, rehearsals, live shows, smiles for cameras, strength for everyone else. She kept saying she was fine. She kept saying she could handle it. But her body knew better. During a live performance, halfway through the second verse, her vision blurred. The stage lights felt too bright. The crowd became a distant hum. Her chest tightened. She forgot the lyrics. Just for a second. But on live television, 1 second feels like forever. She tried to push through. Forced a smile. Took a breath. But her legs felt weak. The world tilted. Then everything went black. Gasps filled the studio. The music stopped. Crew members rushed forward. Someone caught her before she hit the floor. Millions were watching. Backstage, paramedics surrounded her. Oxygen mask. Quick questions. When did you last sleep? When did you last eat properly? The answers were embarrassing. She had been running on adrenaline and fear. At the hospital, the doctor was calm but firm. Severe exhaustion. Dehydration, stress overload. Her body had simply shut down. "You can't live like this," he said. In the quiet hospital room, away from cameras and applause, she finally felt the truth. She wasn't invincible. She wasn't a machine built for performance. She was still that girl from the small apartment. Human, fragile. Simon visited. Not with cameras. Not with headlines. Just him. He stood by her bed for a long moment before speaking. "This industry can chew people up," he said quietly. "You have talent. But talent doesn't matter if you break yourself chasing it." It wasn't criticism. It wasn't praise. It was something else. Concern. And in that moment, she realized something powerful. The goal was never to prove Simon wrong. The goal was never to prove the world wrong. It was to stay alive inside the dream. Producers discussed whether she should continue in the competition. Some whispered that the incident might hurt her image. Others worried it might end her momentum. But for the first time, she didn't think about momentum. She thought about balance. She thought about breathing. She thought about the little girl singing because it made her feel free. The biggest crisis of her career wasn't losing. It was almost losing herself. And standing at that edge, she had to choose. Fame at any cost, or a life that still felt like hers. She didn't return to the stage the next week. And that shocked everyone. Producers expected her back. Fans waited for a dramatic comeback performance. Social media buzzed with rumors. Some said she was quitting. Others said she was afraid. But this time she chose something new. She chose herself. At home, away from cameras, she rested. She slept. She ate real meals. She talked with her mother for hours, not about fame, not about rankings, but about life. About who she wanted to be when the lights were gone. And slowly, something inside her healed. She realized the competition had given her a gift, but also a warning. It showed her that she was strong enough to rise, and fragile enough to fall. Both truths could exist at the same time. When she finally returned for the finale, it wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't about headlines or revenge or proving critics wrong. It was about singing one honest song. Simon watched her carefully that night, not as a judge searching for flaws, but as someone who had seen her grow. The music began. She didn't push. She didn't force power. She let the notes breathe. Her voice was softer than before, but steadier. There was no desperation in it, only truth. And something magical happened. The room didn't explode with noise. It filled with stillness. The kind that only comes when people feel something real. When she finished, the applause was long. Not wild. Not chaotic. Just deep and respectful. Simon stood. He didn't turn away this time. "You've learned the hardest lesson," he said. "It's not about being ready for the stage. It's about knowing when the stage isn't ready for you." She didn't win the competition, but she won something bigger. After the show, she signed a smaller record deal. One that allowed her control. She released music at her own pace. She spoke openly about burnout and pressure. Young artists began writing to her, thanking her for being honest about the cost of chasing dreams.